So ladies and gents, it gives me great pleasure to welcome to our red chair here at Smarter Eggs at the White Horse to Mr. Ernest Cantillon. Ernest, I'm fascinated. You are a man of many parts, but if you tomorrow had to enter a new country and, you know, on some of these immigration forms they write down, or there's a category for profession, what would you write in that slot?
Chancer probably would be, would be one of them.
Yeah.
Would be one of them. Strange enough, I would still, I suppose I'm diversifying a little bit outside hospitality in the last year, but I would see myself very much as a barman still, because it's where I naturally go back to. And my business partner, Electric Dennis, will start off as a waiter, and he feels uncomfortable inside the bar and I feel uncomfortable out of it. And that's kind of where we float to, that's our default setting. And we always try and avoid getting bogged down in the back office stuff where nobody sees you, rosters, you know, we call it human Sudoku because you can never work the bloody thing out anyway. And it never works out anyway. And just you want to see the customer, see just the banter as well, just that engagement. That's why we're in this industry. There's no other bloody reason to be in it.
Yes.
There's easier gigs. So that would be what I would say, and that's what I like doing. It's one of the few things I'm good at. And I'm not good at rosters, but I serve a good pint of Guinness.
Good man. Well, you certainly do. So you might give us a sense, because obviously people coming along tonight see your name on the bill. They're like, oh yeah, that guy Electric, whatever. But just give us a sense of the various things that you're involved in right now, so people have a full spectrum of.
People who know me well is that I'm a highly disorganized individual. I'm laughing. Two reasons. One, so when I was coming up the stairs, I said, do my socks smash? They probably do, but I didn't realise that I'd be in a sunbed. Yeah. So they're navy and black, which is close enough, but anyway. Yeah. And if I had ironed all my shirt, I could take my blazer off like you, but I only ironed the front. But anyway, there we go. So, you're the clever one.
Life wisdom.
So there's lots going on at the moment. It's good. I'm trying to remember what the question was. Was it what's going on?
No, just give us a sense of, you know, you're a different business. Obviously, you know, people know Electric and Soberlane and so on. But just give us a sense of what you're involved.
I started in Soberlane about 10 years ago, and we own the building 10 years this year. I own the building 10 years this year, and it'll be in business 10 years next year. And that's been a great. Got very lucky with that. In that it was in its infancy when things maybe took the downturn. So we were still growing. So we just kept on growing. We didn't know any different. And so somebody said, Jesus, this is, you know, it used to be way easier a couple of years ago. I was around a couple of years ago, so I didn't notice, so it didn't matter. And then we did Electric, and people said we're mad to do it in the recession, but we couldn't have bought a building like that any other time anyway. So it worked out. And so after that, I enjoy setting places up and running them. And like any other job, when you're not innovating or doing something different, it get a little bit mundane, I guess. And I found that I was being dragged away from the floor, which I like and which I would genuinely do forever, and getting bogged down in back office stuff. And we weren't quite big enough then to kind of have a back office as such. So I went off looking at other places, and I found that it's very hard to. You can't by location is a skill I don't have, and yes. So what I did is I found I liked setting up businesses and helping other people, but I just didn't have the time or the skills or the money to do all the day-to-day stuff. So I helped other people set up businesses. So I set up Voodoo, which I loved, and it was a different industry, a nightclub industry and a bar and stuff, and realised actually there was a very different industry to the food and drink industry that I was in. And funny enough, one I didn't particularly like. Just a great way to make money and a very challenging business, but very hard to connect with people. You know, just they come to you just because you're open late, and you're only as good as until the next nightclub opens. You know, it's not a very loyal thing, and you're seeing people probably not at their best, and all. But it's funny.
Wonderful way of putting it.
I thought. So we had Soberlane. It's a relatively small space, and there'd be maybe even half the size of this. And I thought, geez, when I get into the nightclub now, we can have catwalks, we can have fashion shows and cinema nights and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. All they want is boy meets girl, or girl meets girl, or boy meets boy, and lots of variations of that. I'm surprised they learn. And they want lots of drinks, but they want them all the same drinks. You can have all these amazing cocktails. They want vodka and they want Red Bull and whatever. And they, even though they might say they want funky music, they want terrible Rihanna over and over again, umbrella. So it's very hard to differentiate. So somebody says, "Geez, I much prefer the other nightclub," and I'd say, "Well, I don't know the difference, to be honest with you." So I found that to be a strange one.
Okay.
And so then I said, "Geez, what do I love most?" Soberlane. And so I said, "Okay, let's try Soberlane in Dublin." So we did. And that's flying, and it definitely wasn't. I think Cork people say, "Geez, if I could open in Dublin, there's 1 million people, 10 times the population." But you forget there's 10 times the competitors, which I hadn't thought of. And so we opened in a very unique neighbourhood. It's a place called Irish Town, and it is. We were kind of in a place where we could pick our address, because Irish Town is really just a junction, and you have Ringsend, which would be a traditional working class area, and you have Sandymount, which would be a posh area on the other side. And we were in the middle. We said, posh is kind of boring. We don't really want to be associated with maybe being a little bit too edgy either. So we said, we'll be Irish Town. And it meant we were kind of both. And everyone mixes, and everyone, all the other businesses in the corner kind of put their flag to the mast. And they said, we're this or we're that. Whereas we said, we're about our own offering. And anyone who enjoys it, that's what you have in common, liking what we do. So that was different, a very different market. And it's slightly suburban. I'd never been outside of town before. Yeah. It's a real Cork thing, I think, to call it town, isn't maybe. It? Yeah. But I loved it, and the only downside was that it wasn't in Cork. So I spent 9 months up there, and a great 9 months. First time I ever really lived. I've never done travelling or anything like that, so first time I ever lived outside of Cork, and it really made me appreciate coming home. It was great. But it's flying. I'm going up there tomorrow. I'm up there maybe 1 or 2 days a week, and how then we diversified is that I suppose it's a young man's game to a certain extent. And I said I don't want to be 87, cleaning out ashtrays or whatever else. And the happy days if I make it that far, but I definitely don't want to be 87 listening to Rihanna and her umbrella. So we looked at our pie chart of where our money goes. So we said, okay, we have to pay most of the tax to a reasonable extent. We have to pay Scott for his beer, and we have to pay our lovely staff. And then we said there's a big chunk in the middle. We said, okay, well, we can't generate electricity, so we can't do that. And we have to pay the rates and this kind of stuff. But we had an awful lot of kind of random back office expenses, and we're paying all kind of experts for services we weren't particularly happy with. So we set up a company called BTS, which stands for Behind the Scenes. And as we got bigger, we said, my business partner Dennis has Cafe Gusto and Liberty Grill and a few other bits and pieces with his partner Marianne, and we kind of pulled in a couple of like-minded businesses like the guys in Voodoo and stuff. And I said, geez, are you happy with these different things? And they said no. And they said so. We kind of pooled our turnover. We said, geez, we're kind of like a big company when we're all together. So we hired a financial controller and, all these things. These people aren't any good. So we, not their problem, we just didn't know. So we said, what do you want me to do? I said, I don't know. Do what a financial controller does. He said, I don't know what that is. Okay. So we said, okay. And we looked at what people do in the other industries, because I think sometimes people don't look what's the best in their industry, but you want to look at the leader in that field. And that's what we've done. So we have, for all our businesses, we have one administration staff, and really is just like an air traffic controller, and liaise with all of the outsourcing companies. And when I say outsourcing, they're pretty much all Cork companies, but they're people who specialise in payroll, or purchasing, or NERA compliance, or HACCP compliance, or things like that. And the other thing is that removes that level of these jobs that I'm not good at anyway. Yes. And from my staff, so I have chefs who are really good at cooking and like cooking. They don't want to be meeting reps and that kind of stuff. We can only drink so many cappuccinos and taste the same thing over and over again anyway. Yeah. So it's and it lets them get down to what they're doing, and same with me. I don't want to be meeting these people or pretending I know the difference between final accounts and management accounts. At least when I want to be serving pints of Guinness or doing things like this, which are a lot better. Yeah. So that's kind of, and I suppose the last thing that is particularly we found, I don't know if anybody else is here, is in our industry, that we found it very hard to get chefs. And when I came out of UCC, I thought I wanted to be a chef, until I realised it was a really hard job. So I decided I didn't. But I trained with Fault Ireland, adored it. And then just after that, after a couple of years, they shut it. Because they said, okay, there's going to be no jobs for chefs. But when things started to change, I don't think the economy started bouncing back. They didn't realise that there's a 4 or 5 year lead time. You can't just make a chef and add water. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately. So we said, okay, what are we going to do? So we dealt with recruitment agencies, and they started saying, okay, we'll fax your CV. So, okay, we don't have a CV or don't have a fax. We don't want to be dealing with, CVs. Like, I don't care if somebody got an A in playing the triangle in junior cert music. I want to know if they can cook, whatever, be strong enough for this.
Yeah.
And so we set up a recruitment agency, and we studied what Facebook and Google and Ryanair and all these companies do to hire their staff. So we've created an online platform with a Cork company called Zartis, who actually all those companies use, which is really impressive. A great guy, John Denny. And very interestingly, just listening to Veronica there, we chatted to the Enterprise Ireland and the local enterprise board, and they gave us forms to fill out. They were just like this size. Couldn't understand them. But the bank gave us money, and have given us money for the things that we've done. So maybe people have different experiences there. Yeah. And they abuse us when we're over our overdraft and all that kind of stuff. They're not, I wouldn't say they're always very nice to deal with, and they haven't given me everything that I wanted.
Okay.
But my experience with them is largely good. Just interesting to hear a similar story about somebody who just Enterprise Ireland. I think people who haven't dealt with them think they just bang out checks.
Yeah.
So you're going to create jobs, no problem. Let's go to China and we'll build a factory and off we go.
Yeah.
And we'll pay for it. It's not
it's not quite as
well. They haven't banged out the check yet anyway. So, yeah.
Yet again.
Yeah. I'm still asking.
Yeah, well, that's good. And
Yeah.
that's a lesson we've learned from Veronica, right? So I'd like to rewind the clock a little bit for you, right? So seeing where you are today in 2015. So right back to your last year in school now, as you're kind of facing into the leaving cert and so on. First off, I'm fascinated. What kind of student were you?
Poor. I was the worst kind of student. That I wasn't the worst, but I could get away with coasting, and I'd get my C's and my D's, and that was it. My mother, father, brother, and sister are all solicitors and would be nerds, is the only word for it, I guess. And they can eat the books, and they just look at a book and they know what's in it. Yeah. Whereas that wouldn't be the case for me. Yes. But I'd get by in exams, yeah. Okay. It wasn't the boldest. I used to be a bit of a charmer, so I'd get on okay with the teachers, and they kind of wouldn't fail me. I would get like 41 and that kind of stuff.
Good.
So it was okay.
Good. Influencing is important. So as you were facing in now, let's say to the thing that's a couple of weeks away for a lot of kids, or the leaving cert, and you were saying, oh my God, what's going to happen next? What kind of stuff was going through your head?
I knew that I didn't have any natural skill that I could so I think if you're amazingly talented at something, like a chef, or somebody who just has an innate ability to create good food, good music, whatever, or brains to burn, like I'm a good example, a guy James Welton, he's one of the guys who was involved in Coder Dojo. So he was being inside an electric using the Wi-Fi, like the weeks of his coming up to his leaving cert and doing it. And I said, geez, you're not studying? He said, no offence, but I'm working on something that will work whether or not the leaving cert comes on. He said, happy days. And he passed his all exams. But I've no doubt that he's a guy who would have got 1 million points if he had even been in school any of the days. And he knew that he didn't. For me, I had no Coder Dojo, so I needed... And my folks had said to me, don't care what you want to do. You can, be a trampolinist if you want, as long as you're happy. But if you go to college, we think life would be a lot easier for you. And it postpones the Peter Pan decision for the 4 years. You can still decide that you want to be or whatever. So I said, okay, got enough points to get into UCC. And everyone kind of assumed that I would be a solicitor, including me, because everybody else was in the family. And so I said, I'm not sure, but I probably will. I'm just not mature enough to acknowledge it. So I did commerce, which is a nice general vague degree, and lend itself to cramming, which is good, because it's just it's mostly rote learning, which is good. And there was MCQs, which are good, particularly if you've good eyesight. See the man in front of you. And funnily enough, I probably shouldn't tell the story against myself, but I only cheated in one exam ever in my life, and it was my first accounting exam in college, and it was the only exam that I failed in college. So I might be a poor student, but I'm a worse cheat. So there you go. But so I did commerce, and it was fine, and only made the mistake of failing an exam in the first year. Realised that studying in August is not fun. No. So. Got past the exams, and coming up to the end of it, I said, geez, I don't really like being in an office or studying. So all my friends were applying to KPMG and PwC and all that kind of stuff. And so I sent out some CVs and got some interviews, probably because I have the same name as my dad, and they confused us. Great. And maybe thought I had his brains. And so then I said, fuck, I definitely don't want to do that. So they're called milk rounds. They come round and whatever. And I don't really understand the name, actually. We won't go into too much, but so I said, okay, I don't want to. I politely declined. I don't want to go into those interviews, and I took the course in Fall to Ireland. Better still, they paid you to do it, which was great, and it was a real mix of people. But UCC kept contacting me and they said, geez, all your classmates are off and, you know, these amazing jobs. And you're effectively going back to work scheme. And I said, yeah, I'm enjoying it and it's great. They gave up trying to contact me and they referred me to UCC Counselling Centre because they thought that I was having a breakdown. But anyway, I said, no, this is it. And and it was a mix of people who were established restaurateurs in Eastern Europe or places like that and just needed the credibility of a bit of paper, which is probably a pain in the ass for them, but they had to do it. People who just needed it to keep the social welfare payments going, all different things. Yeah. And it was a real melting pot of people and different talents, and it was very good. And that was good because you had people who thought they knew a lot about food, but had never actually been shown the correct way to bone and roll a chicken or to shell a lobster or whatever. And great to see the basics. Yeah. And so that's it. And I have a few scars to show. And like kind of memorize my 3 recipes I can make. Tiramisu and carbonara and whatever beans and toast. So
do you still cook for fun today, or do you?
I love cooking at home, but I would be king of the stir frying. That would be about it. Okay. The great fridge cleaning recipe. Just everything goes into it. So I did that, and then it was coming to the end of it, and you had to go on work placement. So you had to go to CIT for 3 years if you wanted to be a fully qualified chef. You had to work placement in between. So I said, geez, I don't really fancy spending the summer, you know, scrubbing potatoes in Vienna Woods or Rochestown Park or wherever. And I had a friend who had a friend, we had a friend in common, and there was a guy who owned lots of bars in town. His name was John Gaffney. There was a group of them, and they had about 15 bars, and one of them wasn't really performing. And they had tried, it was a gay bar, and it was a sports bar, and it was in everything. It was about twice the size of the stage, tiny bar. Yeah. So they said, would you like to be the bar manager? So I said, happy days. They said, well, there'll be 2 staff, so you'll be the toilet cleaner, and you'll be the guy giving out perfume and everything else. I said, grand, not a bother. I'm never afraid of work. So myself and this other guy, Philip, were landed in the first day, and it was going okay. We were bluffing, and then a keg ran out, and I said, can you change the keg? I said, no, I can't change the keg either. So I knew a friend of mine, his dad worked in the GAT club, and he had volunteered, so we rang him, and he, it's funny actually, so he said, first you need to get a crate to balance on. And I said, okay, I had a crate to balance. I asked him what he did, and it only dawned on me after he was taking the piss because the same man has only 1 leg.
No way.
But I have 2 legs, so I didn't need the crate to balance on. But anyway, so that's the story. And we figured out to change the keg, and off we went. But I think that level of naivety probably worked for us because we did things that other people thought wouldn't work, but they did. So silly things, like, so we had no entertainment budget because it was tiny, but we wanted to do fun things. So we used to, and we still do these things. We used to do raffles for USA biscuits, just for fun. Why not?
Why not?
And it was funny. So everybody knew, like, you really had to give out. You were allowed to take the pink slice or the one with the jelly on it. Yeah. But but you had to share around. And then occasionally a newbie or foreigner would win it. Okay. A particularly German person, and they would take it. And they'd say, "Thank you very much," and put it in their bag. Oh no! You weren't expected to go to the second layer. You could take that home, but the first layer to be given.
Okay. That's legitimate.
In all the bars around us had fireplaces. We didn't. Okay. Small things. So we got one of these DVDs that plays the fire, and off we went. Okay. And then the summer we changed it to DVD of an aquarium, and then that was that. Brilliant. And but just silly things. Yeah. We're surrounded by very good pubs. So it was called Cleavers. It's the old Olden's Butchers. I don't know if any of you know it, on Liberty Street, just kind of run by the Raven, and hence the name Cleavers, from a butcher shop. And there's a very good pub called the Courthouse Tavern, still there and still very busy around the corner. And we had a group of customers who used to like coming to me. One of the customers didn't, and he said that our Carlsberg wasn't very good. Okay. So we, but he said the Carlsberg in the courthouse was amazing. It was like ice cream. It was the best, creamy, right? And it was like the one in the ad or whatever. Probably the best beer he ever had. Yeah. So what he didn't know is that those 2 bars are joined by a lane behind, a service lane. So he was in with the group of lads, and he was saying, "Look, I'm going on to the courthouse. The Carlsberg here is terrible." So I said, "Grand off with you." So I ran down the back lane with a pint of Carlsberg from Cleavers and put it behind the bar in the courthouse. And I knew Mick Mac, and I said, "When this guy comes and do me a favour, serve him that pint." Brilliant. And he did. So I strolled around, and I said, a little out of breath. I was busy. How are things going? Great. This pint is much better than the Merc. And I suppose it was just cheekiness, but like I tried everything else. I changed the lines, I'd washed them, I'd changed the glass, and I just realised it's nothing to do with it. Of course. And funny that when Scott was saying it there, it's true. Largely we have homogenous, easy substitutable product in most of the places. When you get into food, you can diversify a little bit, even though we all still sell fish and chips and and whatever else. And but a pint of Guinness is a pint of Guinness is a pint of Guinness largely. And you haven't won in Mulligan's and Poolbeg or the Grave Diggers or one of these places or the High B in Cork, and people say it's the best ever. But that's just because it's what goes with it. Yeah. So but you have to create that experience to make it different. Yeah. So anyway, that was Cleaver's, and we had a ball. And the model of those guys was that they would encourage their managers to become owner managers.
Okay.
And stop my rant now at any stage if you want to get through your questions. I'm just afraid you'll ask me when I don't understand, so if I keep talking, I know my story, so it's okay.
No, you're on track.
Okay, so
you're doing good.
Yeah, so they said, would you like to buy 10% of the business? And I said, oh, would I what? It was great. So we started and was doing $3,000 a week, and I was doing $9,000 a week. And I said, Jesus, brilliant. So I said I'd love to. Got on very well with them. Very nice guys to deal with. And no need for business rule number 1 with those guys. That was okay. So I went and chatted to my dad, and he said, okay, so you're going to do 100% of the work for 10% of the profits. And I said, yeah. And he said, not the best deal I've ever heard of. So this was 2005. So he said, look, for reasons unknown to me, the banks are giving money to everyone at the moment, and it will never be cheaper or easier to get money. And he said, it won't go on forever. So he said, I'm not saying spend everything you can get, but like I was 22 at the time, 23 maybe, 22. And he said, if you're going to get money and buy a place, now is the time. The downside is that pubs are very expensive, but there was a lot of them and some of them weren't doing so well. So tried it, knocked on lots of doors, and everywhere that was for sale, there was a million guys queuing up to do it. But there's lots of places not for sale. And so I said, okay, let's start there. And any pub that looked quiet knocked on the door, excuse me, would you like to sell? Some people were highly insulted. Other people were delighted, and then I realised that they were quiet for a reason, whatever. And so I knocked on the door, and a very nice guy was in Soberlane, but he just was sick of it. It hadn't worked out for him. It was called the Office Bar. And extremely nice guy, I'd still be friendly with him. And he just said, look, I'd like to do something else. And so we did a deal, and that was it, really. And then I said, Jesus, okay. So Dad says, okay, it's easy to give advice, but I know let's go and talk to the bank and try and find some money. So we did, and they're very supportive, and still have been. And as I said, it's not all rosy with them, but it's okay. And so we were there for a couple of years, and we hit the ground running, and then we picked up where we started off with the Prelude or Riverwood Electric and the other places. And I was very lucky in that I'd always rather be lucky than good. And I've been lucky in that guys I would have played rugby with and played rugby badly went off to play for Munster, so they came in. Or somebody that lived in the park down the road from me went off to be in charge of the social committee of Pfizer's, which was literally, they were massive for us, small things like that. Yeah. And we had one very funny twist in that we got lots of sports channels, and you used to get a lot of like EMC wouldn't really come to Soberlane, but they used to do a lot of entertaining in Jacobs. Yes. They're not based too far from here, I guess. And but they used to say, I want to go to an Irish bar first for a drink. And they used to come in, but we used to have maybe baseball or whatever, and we had pictures of beer and pizza, which wasn't a big thing at the time. Okay. It is everywhere now. Maybe we're trendsetters, but it wasn't at the time. And what used to happen is you get these high-level guys, they're sick of eating fancy restaurants, they're doing it every night. All they want is a beer and a pizza and to feel like they're at home. Yeah. So they used to always cancel the reservation and stay with us. It was great. Brilliant. And it actually reminds me, we had a pizza chef. He was a very tall guy, and how I remember is that he was lazy as sin. And then we had a big, long, very nice guy with a big, deep freezer, chest freezer, and he was sleeping in it. And we used to have to go make it when somebody ordered a pizza, because sometimes there was only one pizza ordered. Wow. But we used to open at 4.
Can you just say, was the freezer on when he was sleeping in it?
Yes, well, he was on it, not in it.
Oh, well, okay. There's kind of health and safety issues there, possibly.
Yeah. So, good one. But he. So we served food till 11, because I said, geez, well, we're open till 11:30, and somebody taking half an hour to eat it, so why stop any earlier? Just because I didn't really know, and I probably didn't know about running costs. But everyone in town finished at 9:30. So suddenly, even the hotels, so if you checked into the Imperial Hotel fairly late, or you went to Jacobs or whatever, one of the other places, and they said, geez, we're finished serving. But our staff, when they finish work, they go to Electric, because they serve, or to Soberlane, so why don't you go? And our last hour was our busiest when everyone else in town was closed, and then those people didn't came earlier. But it was just funny, if I had asked anyone, they probably would have said, well, there's no food to be sold after 9 o'clock. There you go. So there we go. And so you'd kind of never know where you'd pick up those little...
So it's fascinating, right? Because a lot of your story is, especially in the terms of the timing of it, you're very much kind of swimming against the tide, or whatever about swimming against the tide, you're kind of going in one direction when everyone else seems to be kind of going in a different direction.
I'm delighted to be compared to One Direction. That's
Oh,
really,
yeah. Well,
that's a serious.
they have an opening if you're,
Yes,
if you're
vacancy.
looking for...
Are we finishing with a musical number? Is that the...
Well, that's possible.
That's possible, okay.
Also, you could fill the opening through BTS recruitment.
Yes, very nice.
You see,
Nicely
you
played.
get it all figured
Nice
out
plug.
here.
Nice plug.
But so, like, were you kind of manifestly aware of that as you were kind of going through it? That, you know, if you stepped outside of your own pub and then Electric and so on, that all these other guys are going, oh, it's terrible, everything is going down. Or like, how did you?
I'll have to stop. As somebody who can't wear matching socks, I'm not manifestly aware of anything. I definitely wouldn't be thinking like that. And I do think naivety, whatever, but it's just not overthink it, I think, to some extent.
Right.
We very interesting there, like Veronica said, about you see an opportunity to grab it, and then knowing the opportunity not to grab, about the US market and stuff. And we, as I said, and I tried other things. So I'm very lucky that I didn't, for example, buy a nightclub, that I took a job in one before I drove in, and at least I was able to say, okay, I've done a good job, I filled it, and off I go. And same last year I was involved in clothes retail, and she found it very tough. And we were an independent store. We were in a shopping centre, Man Point, but it was just to compete against the big guys was impossible. And I was fascinated by the industry, and having seen it, I said, okay, well, I really enjoyed it, but off we go, and it's not for me. And I didn't really actually have anything to offer. I thought I had lots of skills for it, and I didn't. So I suppose I've been lucky and just kind of picked and choose them to some extent. It's funny, there's lots of, because there's a shortage of good interest rates and different things like that at the moment, there's lots of private investors around looking to invest in businesses, which is great for lots of you guys and for me too. But they kind of say, well, look, you tell me the business to buy, and then you just pay me the dividend, and we'll be fine. And it's not that easy. Just because you can, and usually you say I have a great idea, but I can't get the money. It's a bit strange at the moment. Just because you can get the money doesn't mean that it's always a good idea.
Yes.
And sometimes turning the things down is the right thing. And we found, so I'd say 4 or 5 businesses that are going well. One of them always needs a bit of TLC. And I find for every one extra that I do, everyone just it's that hour or two less that I can get to each one each week. And so you'd say, geez, okay, I think this will make money, but will it make enough money to cover? And when I say money, not money for me, money to keep the thing going, that I can be replaced where I'm after going in those things. And some of you guys, I'm sure, are business owners. It's funny, it's great to be there lunchtime, just jump in for that half an hour, but you'd probably have to hire somebody for 3 hours if you weren't there. Whereas you can kind of multitask, just fill in those little gaps, and that makes a huge difference to the human Sudoku and whatever else.
Yes, I can only imagine. So, like, in your, what seems to be a decade now of business building, I'm fascinated, how do you think it's changed you as a person?
It's funny, I don't do a huge amount of business with Scott. We sell one of his great beers. But after hearing him, I said, Jesus, this is somebody I'd like to do more business with. And I hope I haven't already broken rule number 1. And we will start afresh. I have a good heart and a good head, so we'll work something out. But provided the referendum goes the right way, we can chat about that. But I took my yes lapel off. I didn't want to pin. I didn't want to pin gate 2 in
public service obligations.
Okay, nice.
You're good.
So I've been distracted now by being a smart ass. I forgot my story.
Deflection.
But genuinely, I've spoke a few times in places like UCC, which is always a nice one to speak at. And to the 7 people who have to be there because the lecturer is watching and made them sign in. And there's been guys who have had very interesting things to say. So they say, you must be ruthless, you must get up at... Like I heard Bill Cullen speak, and he was saying, I get up at 4:30 in the morning. And I was chatting to his assistant. She says, yeah, but he takes a nap at 12. So like, in fairness... You don't
hear that bit.
Yeah, you don't hear that bit. But anyway... maybe I said that, I don't know. But obviously I'm bitter over my apprentice application form being rejected repeatedly. But somebody says, it's a dog-eat-dog world and all this kind of crack would be the best. And my advice would always be, it's nice to be nice. And people think, again, I say naivety, but I just think that if you're nice to customers, invariably they're nice to you, you're nice to suppliers, they'll be nice to you, and somebody says, like Veronica said, any chance you could pay me up front? Okay, and then when I'm having a tough time, any chance you can wait a month? And I think to say, yeah, and that's it. And somebody who doesn't, and you're surprised, companies of all sizes, once you build a relationship with them, with the right person, I think that's the way, and we deal with big and small companies. And so we have this dream of having a paperless office. And like Jack said, we still get the man who delivers the jam in the, the empty penny sweet cartons. That's what the jelly things, containers, that'll be on the sweet counter, and he delivers them in that. And like, if you said iPhone, like he'd say like, iPhone? Who phones? Who are we phoning? It just wouldn't happen. Okay. And he has the receipt book, like one thing, it's a raffle ticket. But that's okay too, because his jam is very good. Okay. And it might add, it's reasonably priced. Yeah. It's fresh, and people get a kick out of it. We tell the story and whatever. Yeah. And we use Averill's black pudding. Good. Which is a superb product, and we use things from big companies too. And we have Heineken, and we have the Palace Foods, and a mix. And but it just and funnily enough, Palace Foods were a very difficult company to deal with to begin with, until we struck a relationship with somebody in it. And they're still not great, but they've a good. They're good at getting off. Unusual products that you can get. So anyway, so I'm curious, right? In all these different, well, not all these different, but in the businesses that you are running right now, and the people who are in the business with you, what kind of words would they use to describe your working style, do you think? I'm a great man for getting a phone call just when there's a very, heavy lifting to be done or anything like that. But I don't know. I guess you'd have to ask them, to be honest. We've, I suppose, one interesting thing is, not interesting thing, I guess, but we try and keep as flat management structures as possible. A couple of reasons. Number one, I want what I say the staff to hear, but more importantly, I want they hear what they say. I want to hear it, rather than it being, watered down or being filtered or whatever. And it's a financial decision as well. We don't need lots of layers of management. But so it just means that connection with the customer is closer. And the other thing is that so you have a staff member isn't happy, and they say to their manager every day, and the manager doesn't really listen. Maybe he's the reason they're not happy, and they leave. And with that person, not only is it a pain in the ass to replace them, they have customers that like them. And I've spent 2 or 3 years training them, or they've spent 2 or 3 years learning anyway. And that loss of knowledge is gone, which is tough to replace. And the customers have to get used to a new person again and stuff like that. And also, we're an industry that wouldn't pay very well. We wouldn't have rocket scientists. So the least you can do is be nice to them. Life is too short to work in a job that you don't like. Right. So you respect everybody. But that's given us huge gems. So we would have some Hungarian people working for us, and they are shocked that the owners talk to the kitchen porters. And I talk to them because they say, just so you know, we're throwing lots of mashed potatoes. So I think that the new chef is putting too much of it on the plate. And I said, geez, I think you're right. And whereas the manager or somebody would be terrified of the head chef. Yes. So we have a no shouting rule. And I just think we're not in school. I went to the Christian Brothers. I know what it's like to be shouted at. It's not very nice. Yeah. So, but I just think life's too short to be shouted at. Yes. And it is only mashed potato. Yeah. So no, I wouldn't like to miss, like Veronica said, a Tesco order. I wouldn't like to miss that. Yeah. But I definitely I'm not worried about too much mashed potato. So, and small things. So I've worked in kitchens where kitchen porter summer jobs, they don't care, and all the cutlery just goes in the bin because you're just scraping the plate and it falls in, and you don't really care. Yeah. Whereas for us, they pick it out because they say, Jesus, Ernest's gonna have to buy another teaspoon if we throw them all out, and there's just that bit of relationship and stuff there. Yeah. And the other thing is, it means that the place doesn't have to be like Fort Knox, because people don't steal things, because instead of stealing from an anonymous thing, there's a connection there, and things like that. So, but it works for us, and as I said, maybe it is naivety, but it just it's got me this far anyway, Yep. A very kind of popular question, or at least I've asked it of a few of our Red Chair guests over the couple of years, was the whole question of a superpower. If you could get a superpower, like one of these things. But I'm actually going to ask you a different kind of superpower question. It's funny because I always wanted to fly, and then I realised I'm kind of scared of heights, so it wouldn't be great. I never thought through actually what happened when I did fly. But anyway, okay, sounds good though. Yeah, it sounds good. But if there was one attribute of, let's say, your personality or your working style or even a habit that you have
that you could actually eliminate by putting on the superhero cape? What do you think is getting in your way the most?
I can be a devil for changing things.
Okay.
So a good example would be recently in Electric, we realised that we hadn't changed the bar food menu in quite a while. Selling one, geez, we must get around, give this a bit of TLC. And we were doing patata bravas was kind of the side thing. So we changed to skinny fries. And didn't think anything of it. Then sales were kind of flat and they had been growing. We got chatting to some customers. We said, geez, what's the story? And they said, geez, you got rid of the patata bravas. And there was lots of reasons. Number one, we're the only place in town kind of doing it. Number two, just the way the building is laid out, the kitchens, it's a bit of a journey to some of the tables in the bar. And because they're in a hot tomato sauce, they keep hot. Skinny fries, which are mostly air and feck al potato, go cold like that.
Yeah.
So they weren't as hot as customers were getting them. And so we just changed it for the sake of change. And sometimes, does what it says in the tin if it works. And there's just a balance with not doing it. Similarly in Soberlane, we like to do kind of weird and quirky things. And it's kind of a fine line. So we're having a bit of fun with the Yes campaign at the moment. And it's a fine line between being on the bandwagon and just trying to be involved or get a message across. And that was an interesting one that our staff said, this is something we'd like to be involved in. So I said, okay. And there's, I suppose Soberlane has been there 10 years now. So that it is about me, but it's about all the people who used to work there and the customers. They all have that little connection with it. And somebody'd say, like, I called them Soberlane, I'd say, sorry, I missed you. They said, well, I wasn't calling in to see you. Like I was calling in for something else. And so the group of people said, that is Soberlane, said, like, we feel strongly about this. Okay, off with you. And then I felt that it wasn't bandwagon jumping. We weren't doing something for the sake of doing it.
Yes.
Just fiddling with it because it was the on-trend thing at the moment.
Yes.
So there we go.
Fair enough. So what's next for you? So we've kind of seen here's a cliche of a word, but the trajectory of your decade in business.
What goes up must come down.
I'm not saying that at all.
Yeah. So like a mortar,
what's on the horizon for you?
Well, with BTS, so we've just been messing around with the software and trying it locally, and we hadn't really planned on setting up what I'd call almost a traditional local market recruitment business, and there's been a demand for it. And one of the big reasons is that it turned out that a lot of the recruitment agencies weren't treating the people very well. So they would get onto them and they'd never call and say after how did the interview go. They'd call and say, were you hired? So I can send an invoice. But somebody might say, that guy was like, if it was a girl, it'd say, your man seemed like a bit of a creep. So we'd put a note, don't sell girls for interviews on their own, or that kind of stuff. And I suppose just not seeing people as a commodity or something to sell. Just we're not implying that the Adecos of the world are human traffickers, but I do think that they are selling somebody, and it's a little bit different. It's not just a service or a product. So we, I suppose, just met somebody and said, what kind of place would you like to work in? So I said, geez, I love Italian food. Well, then apply to an Italian restaurant. If that's common sense as opposed to somebody else is hiring. And the other thing then is they're only sending jobs for vacancies. But if somebody came to me and they said, I'm telling you I am the best fish chef ever, and I'd say, well, you should definitely be in my fish bar. Yeah. So, that's I think that you find good people, and then you can teach people more skills or they can acquire it. But if they have these natural innate skills, personality being a big one in our industry. As I said, like a Guinness is a Guinness is a Guinness if you're going to have it served by the right person. Yeah. And it's funny, Scott, when you sometimes, Scott does deliveries himself, fair play to you. You're not like sitting in the boardroom. And maybe you are too, sorry, you made that too. But and it's only because some of our staff, somebody say, oh geez, you should try this. Because they say, well, Beamshire Crawford used to be made there, but then Heineken bought it, and then Scottish Newcastle bought it, and no, it's not made anywhere, we're not made it. At least they say, yeah, he actually delivered it this morning, so I know we have it, and it's made in Mitchelstown, it isn't that far away, and and he's not actually from Mitchelstown, but it just made a connection with it. And but I do think somebody that cares rather than the customer going, I don't know, so that's that.
Makes a lot of sense, Ernest. So earlier you referenced the 87-year-old Ernest possibly working in a bar or doing something along those lines. What do you think, though? Where do you think at some point you'll... Actually, that's not the question. The question is, how long do you want to work in this kind of a space? Does that ever cross your mind?
outdoor work. I don't. I suppose I call it work because everybody calls it work because it's different than home. But I do. It's a very sociable job, and I met my wife in work. We work together in electric, which is controversial. She's the audience and blushing probably. But we did you meet your wife at a Smart Reg event? No,
not quite, but in a previous job.
Okay, well, there you go.
So snap.
Okay, yeah. But it was at her going away party, so there was no laws broken and everything is above board.
Ditto.
And whatever. So, just to get that out there.
That's good.
There'll be no
clearly recorded.
Bill Clinton style denials.
Nothing like that.
See all the cameras, I don't have to retract any statements at a later date.
It's all above board.
Yeah, and I just realised now I'm going to be in a lot of trouble after this. But I suppose I do like change things, fiddling with things. So we're working on 2 kind of big projects at the moment. One, and it's funny you said because we looked at doing electric in Dublin, and then we said, well, it's called electric because O'Shea's Electrical used to be there, and that's how it started off, and the building's Art Deco, and it's on the river. It's electric,
Yeah,
and
it's unique.
I don't know if any of you know Liberty Grill. My business partner Dennis owns it, and we kind of operate the companies all together, but it's not my business, even though I treat it like it is. And I always say tomorrow we're flying Douglas or double the size of work, and he said, no, this is Liberty Grill, and they don't do pasta, and they don't. This is what we do, and that's an important part of it. But the flip side is, we found the 2 things for us at the moment are we found that there is a shortage of chefs in Ireland, and a huge amount of them. So when people went off travelling, some of them are starting to come back, like in construction. But for chefs, you can really travel forever. It really is a universal skill. And for them, they're learning new skills. So you're a roofer and you put on tiles in Ireland, and then there's a recession, you go to Australia and you put on tiles, then you come back and you do stop in Dubai for a year on the way, and then you're back in Ireland. But if you are a chef and you go to the Far East, or you go to Australia, Sydney, one of the food capitals of the world, why would you come home? So that's it. And funnily enough, what Ireland is probably glamorous for is more the producers than the actual what we produce. Whereas over there, they mightn't have the same natural raw products. Hopefully, maybe we're exporting them, but they make it. So it is hard. So we are going to, due to the extension of the European Union, we think that Hungary is a good place for us to have an office for BTS. People say to me, why Hungary? I say, have you ever tasted Polish food? And that's my answer.
Okay.
I've never actually tasted. I was going to ask the Russian lady about Russian food because I don't know anything about it. But afterwards, but jokes aside, Hungary is a place where they have a good food provenance there.
Yeah.
It's good food, and we have a lot of Hungarian staff, so we have contacts there. And quite a lot of Cork businesses have Hungarian offices. For only when I went exploring that I found that out. So we're going to set up over there and Romania. They're the 2. Bucharest and Budapest, largely because I can't tell the difference. And I booked tickets to go to Bucharest, Hungary, and so I said, okay, so we'll figure that out.
That's
one thing.
Rhyming places.
And the other thing is that as I see things like Witherspoons come in, I see a lot of traditional publicans faced with a dilemma. So they know that the business model that they have is dying. They don't have the talent or contacts or drive like Joe here to do events like this or put in a music venue or something like that. I think this is probably a bit of an exception, to be fair, with the space that's here. It's amazing. But we said, so, okay, what does Soberlane do that other publicans can't? So Soberlane it's not in a busy street. It's not about me. There's no former Premier soccer player on it. So, but we take very basic food. The expectation wouldn't be great. Things like chick goujons and pizzas, but make them from scratch, make them profitably, and that can be done somewhere else. We make a point of hiring friendly people of different ages, but that don't get bogged down in cocktail maker and things like that, but give time to customers, and that we're fun. So we don't take ourselves too seriously. Because I think if you're cool, I was speaking at a thing in Dublin recently, and all the guys, these big long hipster beards. And I was saying, by the time my beard catches up with them, their beards will be gone. Yeah. And they'll have ponytails and whatever else. Okay. Yeah, so, and receding hairlines are in, then I will be king of that fad or whatever.
Our time will come.
Yeah, our time will come. So it will probably be too late. We'll be bald then, right? So, but people will always want fun of all ages. And we get a huge amount of corporate business, and people say, you know, can you do a barbecue? No. Can you give us a private area? No. But I say, I guarantee you we'll have a good night. And they say, will you give me €3 drinks? And I say, no. I said, will you pay €10 for drinks? No. I said, well, let's meet in the middle and pay the fair price, and that's we do. But they do come back. So kind of freshness, friendliness, and fun, and we'll package them in a profitable way. So and that's what we're looking to do. So we are in negotiations with suppliers at the moment. And investors to roll out between 6 and 12 Soberlanes around Ireland. Wow. Because I found that when I did the one in Dublin, I owned it. It took me 9 months to set it up, and all my other business suffered. Whereas if I stay and work on the one that I have, and just replicate in other places and facilitate other publicans do it. So that's an exciting thing. And I don't know anything about franchising, so that's a new one. And it lets me do the parts that I'm good at, and lets them do the parts that they're good at, and hopefully we'll all make money. So, and hopefully Hungarian chefs will come over in the boatload and work there, and it'll all tie up together. Hopefully.
Well, I think everyone in the room tonight would agree with me on two things. One is that we've a lot to learn from Ernest's story and his analysis of the world, and also to wish him the very best in the years ahead. Ladies and gents, Mr. Ernest Cantillon.